Coming down from a 7-day gaming binge, and yes, I've been doing some playing, but in this case, you can't hate the player or the games, because the titles I'm showing you today are top tier. Also, it's giveaway time, so don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll outline the specifics at some point in my video today. After my long and intense gaming marathons, I feel like Ringo Starr at the end of recording Helter Skelter, but through the fire and the flames of blistering button mashing, I feel like a D-pad force to be reckoned with. However, will I have a normal life or even a semblance of a healthy relationship if I continue this charade? For now, I let the games control me in place of love, nurturing, respect, and some intermittent hanky-panky. Welcome aboard for my next installment of 5 titles that can ruin your social life also. If Final Destination had a backstory, this title would fill the void nicely. We're looking at a 2D hack-and-slash roguelike that literally kills it with only 2,000 physical standard copies on the Switch. Death is overwhelmed and his employees are burnt out, so it's your job to create order out of chaos and get some vacation time while you're at it. On March 22nd of 2023, developer Magic Design Studios and publisher Arc Games and Pix and Love got down to business and created a title to die for. I can't stress enough how well endowed the graphics and art style felt, along with the smooth slashing of your scythe. I was looking for Steve Vai to make his debut with a new Reaper rap, but unfortunately no such luck. I miss Bill and Ted. Now that I've dated myself, in more ways than one since all I do is play games, I'll humor you with a review good enough to make the 6 o'clock news. Cynical volleys and professional ridicule has never been sweeter. Your character persona, an overworked death that needs to take on micromanagement to control his minions of rebellious employees who ironically think paperwork grows on trees. In an underworld where curses are upgrades and monochrome environments provide no variation, you'll encounter a roguelike that upon death, you start over and get a performance review with gold ingots used for upgrading your future runs. Also, your experience earned will unlock helpful abilities as you level up. When a new run starts, you have the option of signing contracts with an elevator specter that provides you extra challenges on a risk-reward basis. I found it unavoidable to draw some comparisons to Dead Cells, Hollow Knight, and Cuphead with gameplay tone and animation, but who the hell's complaining about that? I loved the enemy variation despite the familiar landscape. It visually provides a system in that you forget the repeating themes and focus more on the next enemy encounters and telegraphs you'll need to reach the elevator. Weapons options are fruitful, and like a box of chocolates, you never know what you're going to get. In this contrived underworld, there's enough humor, action, and progression to long for death. As glass half empty as that sounds, I'm sold to its spoils, and I'm giving it a 7.5 out of 10. Is it weird that I keep hearing the name Heidelberg and I eat Blue Rock candy suckers every time I play this? If the answer is no, I won't worry, but if the answer is yes, then I must have overlooked the plot of a fictional 2D action platformer that combines historical events from the 17th century 9 Years' War and then twists it into a grotesque alternate history where a French musketeer goes to Germany to fight monstrous historical figures. Whew, that was all in one breath, by the way. Now that the plot has been revealed, I was also getting some blasphemous or ghouls and ghosts nods for the thinking man. It was nostalgia mixed with an extra dynamic. On November 18th of 2022, Andrade Games thought up and published this confusing yet amusing title that only contains 2,900 copies on the Switch. Between using your rapier to rape the undead and your musket to mince the pesky insubordinate soldiers, Heidelberg strikes a balance between action and strategy that feels decadent to partake in. As your sword will peel away layers of flesh, let's peel away the layers of review. It's always nice when if you just hang back for a bit, your targets kill each other, and you can use that to your strategic advantage by hiding behind a soldier that's in the line of fire while his buddy eagerly blasts at you from afar. How convenient. I can't begin to tell you how refreshing it is to in essence pick my battles rather than to be forced into immediate slaying. An interesting choice to make a 5-second animation for reloading your musket speaks to the deliberateness of how the developers wanted you to play. It's a game that proves moderately difficult, and you'll die hundreds of times through experimental combat paths, but there's little punishment because you usually start close to your last position. A little attention to variation or depth goes a long way, and visually the backdrops, character types, foreground, and bloody kills make constant deaths a bit easier to swallow. I mean, who thinks of a shirtless man in a pillory barfing out little naked troll children to halt your progression? There's always something to look at and say, what the actual F? I loved my time with Heidelberg and ultimately forgot about Heisenberg. I'll give this gem an 8 out of 10. Great suggestion, and shout out to Whitney Duvall Rogers 7360 for recommending this one. If you've made it this far in, I'd like to thank you and present a challenge to you. For the first person in my comments to tell me what an iconoclast could be figuratively in terms of religion, I'll offer up as a sacrifice one of my Nintendo Switch titles free of charge and free of shipping. I'm looking for simply 2 words in my answer, and using large language models, for example Google AI, is fair game. I can't wait to crown my winner, and I'll respond if you answer my question correctly. Now, onto the game. Released around July of 2019, developed by Joachim Sandberg and published by a slew of peeps including Bifrost, Dangan, Gamir, and Intra Games Limited, we have an action Metroidvania 2D title with a fun little story attachment. This standard version is limited to 2,500 copies on Switch, so it's nice to be one of the few that own it physically. With intricate puzzling exploration and 20 bosses to defeat, there's plenty here to attack besides just beliefs or institutions. Let's erect a review. I was torn to whether or not I was a fan of the story or the gameplay more, and that doesn't happen often to me. I enjoyed the dark story and expressive interactions, but I also enjoyed the linear, colorful nature of my time here, and nothing was thrown at me like I was the target in a heated dodgeball tournament. It's paced quite well other than some long-winded convos. 3 usable upgrades are now what they call tweaks, and you collect material mostly through chests to craft them with. Your sprite named Robin sports a nifty wrench that is used frequently, but she also sports a stun gun for those intimate encounters. The religious overtones were addressed boldly, and the organization called One Concern is the veritable threat. Speaking of threats, the boss encounters were a standout and often require multiple tasks to gain victory. If you told me Way Forward had made this title, I probably wouldn't question it because of the overall structure and feel. If you have 10 or so hours of your life to dedicate to a well-constructed world and narrative, it may just be enough to skip church for a few weekends to do so. 7.5 out of 10. An adventurer with the pronouns she, her, but the appearance of Link, we have Ittle Dew. A play on words perhaps, but not on gender roles. Released March 31st, 2020, a full 2 years and 4 months after the second title's release, we have a game developed and published by Ludosity, who collaborated with One Print Games. There is no official number of copies professed to be in circulation, but from my research it appears there were most likely around 3,000 total. The game still goes for a hefty amount on third-party sites, and I've seen the prices vary from $150 to $300. It may not be as attainable, but I am fortunate enough to own it and highlight it for you today. A complete version would include the original soundtrack, acrylic keychain, a numbered authenticity card, booklet, and a logo sticker, but since I picked mine up for a measly $100, I was satisfied with just the game. This is an adventure puzzler, and it sparked nostalgia and wonder through my entire experience. Let's link up for a review. Secrets, shortcuts, hand-drawn HD wobble graphics, and a plagiarism lawsuit later, we have a title worthy of idolatry. There's something to be said for simplicity and well-defined instructions. This one nails it and charms it up to adorable levels. I didn't even care that the statues were an almost direct copy of the 90s Zelda game. Let's just call them an homage. Which game does it better? I'd say this one because of the attention to details, but I still love the blobby statues from the 8-bit version. Tipsy is your tip giver, who seems like he'd rather be anywhere than helping you with his bored expressions, but it adds to the charm, and his name maybe even alludes to him being an alcoholic. I mean, he's always holding this beaker with some red fluid in it. If it were my guess, I'd say it's a Bloody Mary, and maybe he's just hungover. The puzzles shine and allow you to take your time or shot at solving them over and over. Your resources are limited, but the items you do use have a defined purpose, and the game still manages to keep puzzle solving fresh. When the gold has worn off your NES Zelda cartridge, reach for this one and realize it'll do way more than you think to keep you entertained. 8 out of 10. A sequel, I said? Take my money and clap my cheeks. But this time the price was way more reasonable and the drama way more pronounced for this Legend of Zelda clone. Released November 14th of 2017, Ludosity returned to development, but upon its initial release, Nicholas published it this time. They eventually engaged in a disagreement with Ludosity, which led to the game being delisted from console stores and lowered the print run. Ludosity then published it again on digital platforms. Whew, sounds like some of my past relationships. But minus all the behind-the-scenes politics, the sequel was here and brimming with new additions. The adventure puzzler format returns with some mild RPG additions this time around and a 3D isometric top-down view. This is shaping up to be quite the sequel, it seems, but did corporate incorporate too much? Well, here's my 2 cents. Starting off with complimentary praise, I have to say that the combat felt cared for more so than the first, and an open world to take on did conjure an RPG-light experience, if you will. And also considering the upgradable weapons that double as puzzle solvers, I was in a different frame of mind from the get-go. Within the changes that make it better, therein lies some of the faults. Sometimes I just want that simplicity in a sequel with a few new ideas, or just maybe slightly more at stake. This felt like an entirely different game sometimes, and because of this, it lost some of its irrefutable charm. This one throws enemies at you like Filipino girls on the streets of Angeles City, whereas flattering as it is, it just becomes annoying after a while. It is this annoyance coupled with what seems like an overabundance of changes that hampers the original game's greatness. Even though it becomes a lesson in patience, however, I do appreciate the attempt at giving the player more to do. The comedy still lands and the puzzles are still fairly challenging also, so I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10 after much thought, because as good as it is, it did seem to suffer from too much of a good thing. Volume 5 complete. If you've been looking for a Switch hidden gem compilation worthy of kingship, I'd be happy to wear the crown for you with every new volume I release, so show me your reverence with a royal subscription to the channel, and I'll throw you a Switch party so lit you'll have to drink 10 Bloody Marys to recover. It's been a pleasure once again to serve you and my community, but now it's time for me to get back to the party and start Volume 6 for all you thirsty gamers out there. I got a lineup of Dos Equis and 3 green tea shots just waiting to be slammed in preparation. See you in the funny papers. Cheers.